My name is Ronnie. I'm 78. I live in a small, leaning house on the edge of town, where the sidewalks are disappearing and the weeds are replacing the asphalt. It used to be my castle. Now it's a trap with thin walls, through which the cold of loneliness seeps. When I wake up, the silence is not comforting. It presses down on me like the lid of a coffin that someone just hasn't had time to close yet. There's no longer any children's laughter in my house, and the walls seem to deliberately recall voices that have long since ceased to sound. I have 2 children. Mark runs a financial company that I'm afraid to even ask about, because he always says, "Dad, I'm really busy. I'll call you later." And Lisa, who never picks up the phone. She only occasionally texts, "Sorry, I can't come this week. Too much to do." Business. Someone once told me that love is also business. It's just that not everyone wants to work. I have 3 grandchildren. Sasha, the eldest, goes to university. We used to play chess with him. Now, when I come to visit, he just hides his eyes in his phone. Sometimes I think he's ashamed of me. The younger ones, Lena and Dennis, only know how to complain that they're bored. They're not interested in me, you see. In the store, they don't notice me. The saleswoman addresses the young people behind me as if I don't exist. In the clinic, the doctor doesn't even look up when I speak. He nods mechanically, and then says something like, "At your age, it's normal." I want to bang my fist on the table and say that I'm not age, I'm a person. But I'm silent. Because they haven't listened to me for a long time. I eat breakfast alone. Porridge, toast, black coffee. I drink it slowly, looking out the window. The trees have bent, as have I. The birds are flying away, like the ones I once held close. Everyone has flown away. There is an old leather chair in the living room that smells of the past. I spend most of my day there. I listen to the clock. Time no longer flows, it drips, drop by drop, into my skull, into my memory, into my heart. I keep a diary. Not for posterity, they don't care. I write for myself. So as not to go crazy. To remember who I am. In each entry, I seem to be trying to gather the remnants of my I into one image. Because society has made a shadow out of me. And you know, the most painful thing is not loneliness. The most painful thing is when you are still alive, but you have already been buried in the minds of others. And every day something changes in me. I feel it. At first, like a small pain. Then, like a drill in my chest. It is not just resentment. It is rot. Internal, slow, but stubborn. I don't know what to do with him yet. But I do know one thing, I won't die until I make them remember who I was. Because I'm not just an old man. I'm Ronnie. When I still had strength, the world looked different. I woke up with excitement in my chest, as if every day was a fight, and I knew I would win. They called me Iron Ronnie. Not because I was cruel, but because I could take a hit, any kind. I was beaten by taxes, bankruptcies, losses, the death of my brothers, but I stood. Because I had someone to stand behind. I started from scratch. Literally, I had my father's old watch in my pocket and fire in my eyes. My wife and I spent the first 6 months in a warehouse, until my first business, a small logistics company, began to bring at least some profit. I drove trucks myself, unloaded boxes, assembled a team of the same crazy people as me. We worked without days off. When my son Mark first said, "Dad," I swore that he would never know what hunger or cold was. And I kept my word. All my life I was building not only a business, I was building a fortress for my family. Every stone had my blood in it. Every nail in the walls of our house was hammered in by my hands. In the 90s, when everyone was stealing and breaking, I stood. They offered me to become part of the game, to launder, take out, bury. But I stuck to my principles. Honor is not just a word, it is the currency paid by those who want something more for money. I buried my wife quietly. Without a big ceremony, because even then I understood, the world had become different. Her death was the first bell. She still managed to see how our children grew up, but she did not have time to see how they changed. The coldness in their voices did not begin yesterday. I simply refused to see it before. When they were little, I was a hero to them. They hung on my arms, ran to the door when I came home. Now, they barely open it. Society also remembered me. I gave jobs, I financed schools, I was a patron of hospitals. I was invited to speak to young people. Once in the city they would say, "Ronnie, this is a self-made man." And now, when I enter the same school, the security guard asks who I am. When I sat down on a bench near the office that I once built, someone threw a cigarette butt at my feet. I didn't immediately notice how everything was lost. Respect disappeared in more than one day. It evaporated like water from a glass, slowly, drop by drop. And now, when I was already at the bottom, they made it clear to me, you are no longer needed. But I remember everything. Every look from top to bottom. Every ironic, "Dad, these are different times." Every avoidance of the eyes. I may be old, but my mind is still sharp. And I am learning to see things that young people miss. Lies in smiles. Tiredness in voices. Irritation in silence. I read books because TV kills the soul. I study people because they are like books without covers. And in each of them I can already see cracks that I can press. If I once knew how to build, now I know how to take apart. I no longer expect gratitude. But when I remember how much I gave, I want to ask God, why did He give me so much heart if no one needed its warmth? But there are no answers. There is only silence. And a diary. In it are my memories. And something else. I have already started writing down not only thoughts. There are names. Events. Words that hurt me. I don't know yet what all this is for. But I know for sure, nothing has been forgotten. Mark arrived on Saturday without warning. He just walked in like a landlord, and right from the door he started talking about cost optimization. He said my house was old, heating was expensive, and in general, why do I need so much space? He said he could rent it out, and I could rent a room in a boarding house, where there's care and a TV. I was silent. How could I explain to him that every crack in these walls is not a flaw, but a memory? That this house is the only thing that still keeps me on this side of life? But he didn't care. He looked at me as if I were an object, not a father, but an asset that needed to be used effectively. I didn't see anger in his eyes, worse. There was indifference. The next week I called Lisa. I just wanted to hear her voice. She sighed into the phone as if I had interrupted something important. "Dad, I can't right now, I have a meeting. Write to me if there's anything urgent." I heard laughter in the background, she was with someone, having fun, living. And no. I didn't write. And on Friday, Sasha came. He brought me a tablet, he said it would be convenient to read the news, play games. He was sitting in the living room, scrolling through some videos, not saying a word. I dared to ask him to help me with the phone, I couldn't change the volume. He reluctantly took it in his hands, muttered, "Oh, God, you can't even do that." Then he laughed. I saw his smile, as if he had won some child's game. My own grandson humiliated me. And not with words, with intonation. With that humble contempt that hurts more than screaming. And this is the one I held in my arms when he was still afraid of the dark. It was even worse in the hospital. I came with chest pain. They sat me in a corner, asked me to wait. Half an hour later, a nurse came up to me and threw me a piece of paper, "Fill it out yourself, we don't have enough people." I was shaking. My hands wouldn't obey. She looked at me with annoyance and said, "Yes, you should be here, not under care. All these little things are not just inconveniences. They are wounds. Small, but daily. And they don't heal. They accumulate." And I started writing them down. Everything. By name. In my diary. August 20th, Lisa. Refusal to talk. Eyes not listening. Voice cut off. August 23rd, Dr. Last name, Kolchitsky. Weighs 95, holds a pen like a weapon. Words cut. August 27th, Sasha. Insult. Laughter in my face. Once asked for fairy tales, now laughs at old age. I was scared by how calmly I wrote it. Without emotion. Like an accountant writing down debts. And then there was that day. The day something broke completely. I was leaving the store. I bought bread, milk, apples. My hands couldn't hold it in anymore, the packages tore, everything scattered on the sidewalk. People were walking by. I raised my head and said, "Excuse me, help me." One man stopped. He looked me up and down. And, with a crooked smile, he said, "Old man, go home already. This is not a social club." Two teenagers laughed nearby. One even said, "Take it off, it's going to be a cool reel." I watched my apples roll down the road, and suddenly, I saw nothing more. No people. No sidewalk. Only darkness. It didn't come from outside. It came out of me. I got up. Slowly. Calmly. I picked up the bread. I looked at them. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Because at that very moment he was born. The one I once was. The one who doesn't forget. The one who doesn't forgive. The silence of my house is no longer empty, it breathes with me. And this breath is cold. I didn't come home old. I came back quiet. And silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's a weapon. Especially when it's owned by someone who's learned to wait. At home, I took an old box from the mezzanine. It smelled of mold, gunpowder, and strength. Inside was what I once was, notebooks with contacts, business cards, old photos of people who held the city in their hands when there were no smartphones and public tenders. Some are already dead. But not all. I started calling. Slowly. Unhurriedly. My voice trembles, but the words are precise. Some don't recognize me. Some hang up. But some remain silent. Because they know, if Ronnie calls, it's not just a greeting. "Are you still alive?" asked old Kovalchuk, a former prosecutor who had long since faded into the shadows. "Alive. But not for everyone," I replied. Then there were meetings. In dark cafes, in abandoned offices, in a car by the river. We don't say much. I don't ask. I suggest a game. The old, good one. Like the old days. But now there are new figures in it. A new section appears in my diary. Not just dates and names. Now, plans. Scenarios. I don't take revenge physically. That would be primitive. No. I chose the path of the stronger, to change their lives so that they themselves feel superfluous. The beginning. Mark. My son. His company is based on a few key partners. I knew how to reach them. I remembered who brought them into the game. One call, and an unexpected competitor appears in an important tender. Better prepared. Mark loses the contract. He doesn't suspect anything. He thinks, the market. The economy. His partner, with whom they have been working for a long time, suddenly learns about several unpleasant details of Mark's past, through an anonymous letter. With evidence. They argue. His reputation is cracking. And with each crack, Mark is more and more like me today. Confused. Alone. Then there's Sasha. I knew he was looking for an internship. His resume is weak, and his self-esteem is too high. I contacted an old friend at the corporation he went to. One letter, one call. He gets rejected. Conditionally politely. But with the subtext, "You're not as smart as you think." Several comments appear on his social media that question his honesty. "No, I didn't cheat. I hinted." He gets nervous. He deletes his accounts. For the first time in his life, he's out of control. Lisa. It was more difficult with her. She doesn't take money from me, doesn't ask for help. But I knew her weak spot, her image. She has lectures, online speeches, and is active in public life. I contacted the editor of one of the blogs that I use to finance. I asked for analytics. They found a couple of inappropriate statements that she wrote in her youth. And screenshots. By chance, they ended up on the internet. Lisa has to make excuses. She doesn't sleep at night. Because reputation is everything. And now she's cracking. Everything looks like a coincidence. I'm in the shadows. Just an old man in a chair. But in my head is a labyrinth in which I leave traps for everyone who has ever stepped on my soul. And what's most surprising is that I don't feel revenge. But control. What I've been missing so much. I'm no longer a shadow. I'm the conductor of this symphony of retribution. And the music sounds without falsehood. My house is silent. But the silence is no longer lonely. It is an ally. Every rustle, every breath in this house is like a prompt, "Keep going, Ronnie." They need to learn to see. Because I don't want to destroy. I want to make them feel. And that's scarier. I have always believed in the power of a handshake. In the old days, a man's word was worth more than a signature. I knew who to respect and who to fear. And most importantly, I learned to see weaknesses in people. No, not to humiliate. But to know who will fall and who will rise. Now this knowledge has become my weapon. I worked silently. Slowly. Without fanfare, without explosions. Because real pressure does not break immediately, it seeps through. Like water washing away the foundation. Family. Mark is confused. Those who were with him yesterday are now doubting. His partners are no longer sure whether it is worth investing. I know what it is like, when you are not trusted. You wake up, and you feel the ground shaking. And he feels it. But he still does not understand where it all started. Lisa has become nervous. During interviews, she constantly looks at the camera, as if waiting for a blow. With friends, she is careful. Her fame is like a crystal ball that I hold on the tip of my finger. I don't hit. But I don't remove my hand either. Sasha. He changed. He became withdrawn. For the first time in a long time, he came to me himself. He sat down opposite me. He looked at me, not knowing what to say. And I looked at him like a boy lost in his own pride. "Grandpa," he said, "have you ever felt that everyone wants something from you, but no one listens?" I smiled. And I answered, "Always." But I learned to listen to myself. And then everyone starts to hear you. He didn't understand. But he will understand. In a little while. Acquaintances. Everyone who once looked down on me began to receive reminders. That pharmacist who mocked my slow hands suddenly received a check, arranged through the old quality control system, in which my traces still remain. The security guard at the clinic who pushed me away suddenly found himself in front of his superiors. The video of his rudeness accidentally ended up in the city group. I didn't post it. But I sent it. To the right, honest journalist. My game is not about physical pain. It's about mirrors. I put a reflection in front of each of them, crooked, distorted, but real. And I forced them to look. To tears. To losses. To remorse. The world. Society is starting to hear. The neighbors have become friendlier. The store I've been going to for years, now they greet me by name. I don't demand it. But they feel it. I am. I haven't disappeared. I haven't faded away. I'm Ronnie again. But not the one I was in my youth. This one is deeper, colder, wiser. I no longer hold on to love. I am the one who learns to control the weight of silence. Because true respect is not in words, but in looks. And now they don't look back. I didn't start destroying the family. I just pushed the boundaries. I showed where comfort ends and truth begins. Everything that happened could not have happened. They built their own prisons, I just turned on the lights. On Sunday, Mark called first. Without asking. Without advice. Just, "Dad, do you want to come to dinner?" I was bored. I thought. And I said, yes. But not today. I didn't become an enemy. I became a reminder. That old age is not a shadow. It is an experience that sees through. The last column appeared in my diary. Results. There is no evil there. Only balance. Everyone got no more than they deserved. And now they have learned to see. All I wanted was to be noticed. Not grand in the sense of fame, not strong in the sense of power. Just noticed with respect, so that my hands and eyes would not remain unclaimed, so that my word would count not because it gave orders, but because it contained truth. I didn't ask for a miracle. I asked for humanity. And when that was denied me, I decided that teaching them was also my job. When it was all over, no, not like in fairy tales, where the hero stands on a mountain and the crowd applauds him. No. It was quiet. There were a few tense dinners, a few phone calls, a few faces without masks. My children began to look at me differently, not immediately with love, but with caution, as if they saw in me not a person, but a problem that needed to be solved. They didn't shout, they didn't beg. They began to listen. My grandson came not for advice, but with a question he was ashamed of: how to live when everyone expects you to play a role you can't fulfill. I didn't give him ready-made answers. I gave him a simple thing, the opportunity to feel heard. For the first time in a long time, he cried in my arms, and those tears weren't about me, not at all. They were about youth being lost under the pressure of other people's expectations. And I realized, revenge isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's a way to break the chains we put on ourselves. My methods made them suffer, but didn't destroy them. I wasn't an executioner. I was a mirror that shattered into pieces in their hands, and each piece reflected what they didn't want to see. They screamed in pain, and in those screams I heard something I hadn't heard in years, a real reaction, alive, sincere. They began to respond, not with words of official courtesy, but with a genuine appeal to their father, to their grandfather. And that was my victory. Society had also changed, but in its own way. People in the store began to greet each other, but not with a hypocritical smile, but with attention. A different security guard came to the clinic, one who had learned to be humane even in a fast-paced world. Every step towards me was a small redemption for years of indifference. Did it make them better? Maybe, in part. Did it make me happy? No. Because happiness is not an open door or a changed status in the eyes of others. Happiness is the peace within that comes when you know you did what you had to do. I don't celebrate. I don't stand above them in the position of a winner. I don't need more proof. My heart has calmed down, but a cold hardness has remained in it, like the skeleton of a tree that has survived a storm. I realize that the power of old age is not that it breaks the young, but that it forces them to look at themselves honestly. And that can hurt more than any reprisal. I once dreamed that my children would continue my path of honor. They took a different path. Revenge cost me more than I thought. I lost the space for easy forgiveness. I became coldly retaliatory because it was demanded of me. I didn't want to become cold, their views made me so. But now that the silence has changed, I haven't become bloody. I have become a dark memory that reminds me, never cling to a person while they can still turn to you. My diary lies on the table, open like a wound, but healed with threads of truth. I no longer write lists of insults. I write notes about what I have seen, how people change when their breath changes. I see that my life has become a lesson not only for them, but also for me. I have learned not only revenge, but also how to stop being the one who allows contempt to break me. In the evenings, I go to the garden, look at the sky and think, what did I want more, to be feared or to be respected? Probably neither. I wanted a place. A place where my existence would not be superfluous. And that is what I have achieved, a world that has learned to count my presence. It does not bring back youth. It does not make me physically strong again. But it gives me what strong people always value, dignity. I have not turned into a monster. I have remained a person who has learned to defend my right to respect. I do not celebrate my actions, but I do not regret them either. They had an effect, and that was enough. I taught a lesson. They learned it. And the world became a little more attentive. The last entry in my diary is not revenge or malice. It is a reminder to myself and to those who still read my lines, never let the world neglect your presence. Age is not a sentence. It is a measure of experience gained and a chance to remind those who have lost it of the dignity of those who have lost it. The last words I wrote today, you don't ask for respect, you measure it in your actions. Old age is not an excuse to be silent. It is your last chance to teach the world to listen. Ronnie.
Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.